We're going to learn about the background to language learning. How do children learn? Now, this is very important for you because these are skills we can transfer from this training into other aspects of language. And this is basically the reason why we use the TKT as a method of teaching methodology. All right. So remember, learning language is basically at the heart of learning. All right. So the methods we use for learning language are important to us. And as teachers, we need to take note of some of these important items that I'm going to talk about. For example, learner characteristics. We're going to look at learners' needs, their motivation for learning, how children learn a language. We'll look at form, which is grammar, and we'll look at the role of error. And even when talking about error, you find out that you can transfer that knowledge into the teaching of other subjects. Now, on learner characteristics, some of you already know, if not all of you, that we have different types of learners. Okay. Now, under characteristics here, Cambridge puts visual, auditory, and kinesthetics under characteristics. All right. In most learning psychology, we would put them as learning styles. Okay. But a learning style is still a characteristic of a learner. Some learners like to learn by looking at things, some like to listen, and some like to do hands-on work. So that's a characteristic. The characteristic would be if they're male, they're female, if they're shy, and different peculiar things, their motivation for learning, their interest. All right. So if we understand our learners better, then we can create lessons that are best suited to them. All right. Now, other learner characteristics in the TKT, we would look at learners that like to learn in groups. They like group work. And then there's some learners that like individual work. They hate working in groups. Then we have the reflective learners. They're really deep thinkers. They're very quiet in your class. But if you ever ask them a question, they come out with very high quality ideas. Then we have the impulsive learners. And I guess some of us have been that before. I used to be a very impulsive learner. Before the teacher asks the question, I have the answer. My hand is up already. Okay, that was the kind of learner I was. I was also an individual learner. Okay, down to my undergrad. I love to work on my own, but as a postgrad student, I learned to work in group. And I found out that group work actually increases your learning propensity. It helps you to learn more and to be able to gather ideas from your colleagues. Okay, so now I'm a very reflective learner. I'm very reflective, but I have a very good balance. Then we have the analytic learners. They're always looking for opportunities to analyze things. I'm sure as I'm talking to you, you have some people already in your mind. Can you think about what kind of a learner that you are? Okay, and then we have the autonomous learner. This learner wants to choose what they learn. Okay, so there are different types of learners in our classrooms, and if we understand them, we can make learning fun for each one. For an autonomous learner who likes to choose what they like and all of that, you can tell them, okay, you have question 1 to 5 to start. In our class today, while every other person is doing 1 to 5, you can go to that learner who is an autonomous learner and you can say, you can start with question 5 if you like, and then or any question that you feel you want to start with, just make sure you do the 5. All right. We don't do that maybe in a controlled environment like an exam, but in class, we can make room for different types of learners. So we need to be flexible by knowing the peculiar characteristics of our learners. They could be their gender, their motivation for learning, their learning style, the learning strategies that are best for them, even their maturity. Are they in year 1? Are they age 8 or age 18? Okay, and their experience in learning the language. Have they learned for 2 years or 3 or 4 years? All of these are important. You must understand your learners before you can create lessons that are well suited for them. Then we have their learning strategies. There are different learning strategies. Now, our focus right now is on language learning. And like I said before, you can transfer this knowledge into other things. All right. So it's basically the ways that learners choose to learn. You can't force learners to learn like yourself. The more room we give learners in our classroom, the more they will learn. So we have to give opportunity and look for the best ways that our learners can engage. For example, some learners are good at cramming. All right. So for such learners, they might want to repeat things in their heads until they remember. I have I am good at memorizing things, but I do not memorize by repeating. I like to use my eyes to scan words, and I scan them a few times and I capture that word in my memory. Okay, so even if I'm learning geography or biology or whatever, if I scan it a few times, I repeat it a few times, just by scanning, I've got the answer. When it comes out in the exam, I can pass it. For some learners, it's repetition. They repeat. So if you see a learner muttering in your class, trying to repeat, and sometimes some children will be using their fingers to remember, those are learning strategies. Allow them to do that. And if you find that a strategy works well for a learner, encourage it. All learners cannot learn in the same way. Do not force learners to be like other learners. Every learner has their own learning strategy. So these are some strategies I want to give you. Some people are good at learning language by paraphrasing. Okay? So she went for a walk. She went for a walk. She took a walk. Hmm. Okay. Paraphrasing, you know, saying it in a different sort of way. Like instead of asking your learners to define using the exact language that you gave them, that's not a good way of learning, because I could cram and pour it out to you, but I don't understand. If a learner can paraphrase anything you tell them, use their own language, they've learned it, they understand it. So some people learn by writing vocabulary. So if you see a learner taking down notes, allow them to write, for goodness sake. You tell them, oh, don't take down notes. I've seen trainers who will say, don't take down any notes. Just listen, just pay attention. I'm going to give you the slides. For goodness sake, some people learn by taking down notes. By taking down notes, they are reinforcing their remembrance of what is being taught. Same thing in class, memorizing new words, experimenting by using new language in conversation. People like me, when I was a child, could be talkative in talking about what I have learned. The more I talk about it, the more I learn about it. While there are some learners, I remember during up to my university days, there were learners when we're about to sit for an exam. When you say good morning, they don't want to talk to you. Why? They feel that everything they have crammed will disappear if they talk to you. So we have different types of learners and we allow them to be their best selves. Okay, so another strategy for teaching language or teaching something is to reinforce learning by using that language or reinforcing the concept over and over again. Okay, so the frequent use of language reinforces learning. Seeking feedback from teachers. Some children want to hear from you. How am I doing? Please oblige them. It's a process for learning for them. Some children can record themselves speaking English. Okay, so writing composition is not only about writing. Composition has to do with producing language. You can also compose language orally. So I want to encourage you that composing orally is also as good as writing physically. So while we're not in an exam situation, you can test the language of a student if they can compose orally or if they can write physically. When I was in university studying English as a first degree, we did advanced composition. And our advanced composition was not even writing, it was learning how to become orators. We focused more on making oration, speeches and things like that. And we found out that the best and greatest speakers are not those who speak highfalutin languages. They are the ones who use very simple language. They are the ones that move people and sway people. It's not how many big words you can speak, but how well you are understood. So, maturity in learning is another very important thing that we need to take into consideration. So, children learn in a certain way, they behave in a certain way. Teenagers behave differently, and adults behave differently. If you treat an adult like a child, you know that it's out of order. Or if you treat a child as a teenager or an adult, you know that you're going out of order. So, the mental and emotional or physical development of a child is so important to their learning. And it is important also in English language teaching. So I have this chart here that you can take your time and look at. I don't want to focus too much on it, but I'm going to pick out three things. Children, little children, have a very short attention span. Teenagers have a longer attention span, and adults have the ability to concentrate even more. Okay? Little children are not very good at controlling their behavior. Teenagers control their behavior more. Okay, they have the ability to control and plan their own behavior, but adults are more stable when it comes to control and planning their own behavior. Another thing is that little children are not very self-aware. So they can do anything, they can pour powder on themselves, they can dress in any way and they don't feel ashamed. But for teenagers, if you put a teenager on the spot, he is easily or she's easily embarrassed. They are more uncomfortable about themselves and their actions. So if you're a teacher, if you've been humiliating your teenagers in your class, they're not going to respect you. They're not going to like your subject. So you cannot do that. The way you talk to a teenager in front of their friends is not good for a teenager. A little child may not mind if you reprimand them in front of their friends. They're not very self aware, but a teenager would object. Likewise, and adults. Okay, so these are things that we need to know. Remember, you're going to have this video so you can look at this, take time out, and study the difference in maturity levels of children, teenagers, and adults. So if you're teaching children, learn how children behave and use it to your best advantage. If you're working with teenagers, learn how teenagers behave and treat them right, and you'll be able to teach your subject. Learners have needs, and in the TKT, their needs could be personal, they could be learning needs, they could be professional needs. Someone who is doing IELTS is doing it because perhaps they want to travel, migrate to get a job as a doctor or a nurse somewhere else, or it could be for an academic reason. Okay, so an academic reason might be to go to a university in the United Kingdom or in Canada by learning English as or taking the IELTS exam. We have learning needs, the need to pass an exam, okay, which is where IELTS fits into. The need to learn how to write, for example, a skill and all that. Then we have personal needs. Learners need praise. They need your affirmation, okay? They have a need for security, curiosity. They have psychological needs. And the reasons are here on the slide. Our personal needs are influenced by our age, our gender, our cultural background, our personality, etc. And our learning needs could be our learning style. So I need to be allowed to write. Some children need to be allowed to drool, or what's the word? To doodle. That's children who love to just draw as they're. All you need to do is tell them, you know what, you can doodle in my class as long as what you're doing is connected to the subject I'm teaching. It's not that the children are concentrating on the drawing. No, their brains work that way. They need to be able to use the pen and just doodle, just draw what you will consider as nonsense, but it's helping their brain to work. For some, it's helping them remember when they take down notes. Some, it's helping them remember when they're doing clear diagrams of what you are teaching. So we have learning needs, and we need to observe our learners so that we can make the best of every opportunity for them. Please